Hey everyone, welcome to our next flip video. Today we're going to be talking about Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, A Vision of the Union Healed. So if you see here, we have a picture of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address speaking about his vision for the country. The South didn't share the same beliefs as the North, regrettably. Some key terms you should know to help you understand the inaugural address will be border states. The border states were a block of states that practiced slavery while remaining loyal to the Union, including Delaware, Kentucky, Maryland, and Missouri. Secession is also an important term. It's the formal withdrawal of a member state from an association or a union. The first state to secede was South Carolina, occurring on December 20th, 1860. Next, we have a couple more terms. We have the Confederacy. It's an organized after a group of southern states seceded from the Union. The Confederate States of America wished to establish themselves as an independent nation, and they were represented by President Jefferson Davis. And then we have the National Union. The National Union Party was formed in '64 out of a coming together of Republicans and war Democrats to keep the Union war effort strong and re-elect President Lincoln. In order to produce a more balanced ticket, the National Unionists nominated Tennessee military governor Andrew Johnson for vice president. So we have the two sides here, the Confederacy representing the South, and the National Union representing the North. So another important idea is abolitionism. Abolitionism was the movement to completely end slavery in the United States. It grew only into the Northern Campaign in the 1830s. It was supported primarily by prominent writers and politicians, and in 1860, abolitionists consisted of mainly the Republican Party. The Southerners were explicitly anti-abolitionism. When South Carolina left the Union, about 6 weeks after Lincoln's election, they fired on federal forces at Fort Sumter 4 months later, and the Civil War that Lincoln and many Northerners anticipated was here. And before the end of Lincoln's presidency, secession would be controlled and the institution of slavery would be collapsed. So just a little timeline for you of the Civil War. First, Abraham Lincoln becomes president in 1861. Then during that same month, 7 southern states secede. The South attacks Fort Sumter, beginning the Civil War. The Battle of Bull Run then ensues in July of 1861, where Jackson crushes the Union troops. We then move to 1862 in September, where we have the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. In 1863, January, Lincoln signs the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing the slaves. Later in July of '63, Lincoln delivers the Gettysburg Address. And then in April of '65, finally, General Lee surrenders to General Grant of the North, ending the Civil War. So, what was going on near the end of the Civil War? The Civil War had made both the North and South suffer, and though the Union had more numbers, they were often overwhelmed by the superior military minds of the Confederacy, led by General Lee. Even though there was heavy criticism from all sides, Lincoln maintained enough support to win re-election in '64 as the war drew to a close, and Lincoln made preparations to begin reconstruction in the South once the nation was whole again. Lincoln was known as the healer of our nation because he was able to bridge the two sides once again. The Civil War had just ended, and many Northerners wanted to hold the Southerners criminally responsible, but Lincoln gave most of them forgiveness and moved past the Civil War era to bind up the nation's wounds. Lincoln explains in this inaugural address that the U.S. had paid the price for leaving the slavery question unresolved as a nation, and we were paying for it through the war. He believed that the war settled the issue and that it was time to rebuild the country. This speech was also designed to illustrate his ideas for the country and to think about moving forward as a nation and where we would be in the near future. Some other details in his inaugural address was he uses a lot of biblical terminology, such as God, divine, Bible, prayers. He is comforting the nation. He is trying to heal the wounds of war through his rhetoric. And he says, with malice toward none, the South would be forgiven, right? And so slavery is ended at the end of the war. Here are some of the biblical references he mentions in the inaugural address. He mentions from Matthew 7:1, Matthew 8:7, and Psalms 19:9. Really, in this Psalms 19:9, he's talking about slavery and how we are being forced to, we being the United States, the South and the North, being forced to pay a price for the sins, I guess you could say, of slavery. And then we move on into this little wordle. All the terms that are in here are used throughout the second inaugural address, with the larger, more prominent words being the focus of Lincoln's address. So why was the speech so important? Lincoln was trying to highlight for the North that although this has been a long trial by God, that he can heal the nation's wounds through unity. It was also intended for the leaders and citizens of the South to understand that their wounds could be only healed through uniting as a country and not maintaining two separate sides. And it was the duty of all Americans to see that all people would be treated equitably so that healing and prosperity could return to the United States. And notice the difference between equitably and equally, right? And so equitably will be people receiving what they need versus equally people getting all the same. And so just to highlight some of the main ideas you'll be looking for in the inaugural address, Lincoln was trying to convey the message that the Union was poised for victory. This war is the price we must pay for our injustices against the slaves, or the people that we turned into slaves. And then even though we are fighting a war, we are still one nation at the end of the day. So that's it for our flip video. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you read Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. That can be found in a link under the blog. Thanks.